My name's Tim Heenan. I'm the president and CEO of Mirasol Resources. And I think, as everybody knows, Mirasol is a company that is focused on discovery. The cautionary statement, which you can follow up on our website at your leisure. Just a few key highlights on Mirasol. I think what is key here is that Mirasol has been focused on the highly prospective and mine-friendly jurisdictions, in my impression here, of Chile and Argentina since the inception of the company. And the founders of the company actually worked in those two jurisdictions for cumulative decades prior to that. So obviously, with that history in Chile and Argentina, Mirasol has a very strong and established in-country permitting and operating experience. We've been there for a long time and know how to work in both of those countries. At the moment, we're working towards starting up again a drill campaign in our flagship property, Sobek. And just to comment, over the years, we've been able to maintain, as you'll see on the next slide, a very conservative share structure with significant insider ownership. So just a little bit about the share structure and treasury. Actually, our last financial statements were out on September 30th. There is some new ones coming out shortly, but at that point in time, we had about 6.3 million Canadian in the treasury. We've obviously been working diligently and spending, so it's much less and maybe even getting close to near to half that at the moment. The conservative share structure, we've never had a rollback in the share structure, and since being public, since 2005 actually. Today, the outstanding shares are about 65.8 million, with fully diluted, it'd be up closer to just over 74. Our market cap is about 36 million, which we consider undervalued. We'll explain why when you see the presentation. So with 66 million shares out, the directors and management currently hold about 31% and institutional about 12%. Our flagship self-funded and active projects, we're going to talk mostly today about Sobek, and that's located up in the Vicuña district of north central Chile. And we also have the Virginia silver deposit down in Santa Cruz, but we'll be focusing today on Sobek. Now, how did we come to get into the Vicuña district and become Sobek? Back in our generation initiatives of 2015 and 2016, we were generating areas of interest up and down the entire length of the Andes. And basically what we're looking for there is these all-important north-northwest trans-Andean structures or lineaments in areas that there seems to be a metallogenic gap. You can see on the right here, to the north of Sobek, we have the Maricunga belt with amplitude of advanced projects and post-producing mines, and down south, the famous El Indio belt. But there was a notorious gap here, which is now the Vicuña belt, obviously. So that's where we started to work, and we staked our first properties in that gap. The first one was actually Sobek South, and then we've been able to expand constantly over the years to form a fairly large presence on the Chilean side of the border, right along both to the north and south of that trans-Andean lineaments. Now, if you look along the Andes, almost all the known large mines are associated with those north-northwest structures. Obviously, they have interactions with other north-south structures or north-northeast, but those north-northwest trans-Andean lineaments are all important for the focus of these large deposits. We've been just recently had a significant expansion in the Vicuña district, and that was by the incorporation of a large property package owned by Sokimich. That's a very well-known Chilean, actually lithium company, lithium and nitrates mostly. They held a large package in the district, and we've been able to negotiate a good deal with them. So now we've picked up their SQM Rosita package. You can see that in yellow, Mirasol's package, the Sobek North, Central, and South, and then to the west of Sobek North and unifying Sobek North and Central is the Sokimich package in yellow. Now the district is chockers full. Obviously, the Lundin group of companies have got a significant position in the district with NGX at Jose Maria, Lunahuasi and Los Helados. Filo Mining, of course, has got the Filo del Sol. Large companies in the district include Barrick and Codelco, obviously Sokimich, which is now with Mirasol. Some other companies like Mogotes Metals, Pan American Silver, now has a presence by the takeover of Yamana, the property called Las Flechas further to the south, and some local Chilean companies like CMP, which is a Pacific mining company, El Moro, some smaller companies like Laguna Brava, and also some small companies and individuals. There's not much room to move in the district at the moment. We consider the Sokimich, the incorporation of the Sokimich package, a strategic expansion for Mirasol in the district. You can see in the map here, it's a large property package. It's over 11,000 hectares all told. And this package came into us as a all or nothing basis. We had to take the entire package, which was, I think, an advantage to Mirasol. We are going to move forward, evaluating this property, but we are prioritizing the areas for follow-up in the upcoming exploration activities. This is not considered urgent because we do have time to move through this pragmatically and analyze, evaluate the area. Obviously, the highest priority is the unifying block around to the south of Sobek Central, to the north. You can see that in the black and red line. That's kind of where we're going to concentrate. We feel that's the most important part of the package at the moment. In the contract, of course, we can reduce the property portfolio as we wish moving forward. But before we can relinquish any portion of the property, it needs to have been properly geologically evaluated, which I think is logical. So the Vicuña district, it's I think world-renowned now as the giant copper gold district up in the high Andes of north-central Chile. So with Sobek and Rosita, we have a good position in that globally recognized Vicuña district. And just kind of for orientation purposes, in Sobek North in the southeast corner, we're about 3 kilometers west of the Lunahuasi discovery of NGX. That was formerly called Potro Cliffs. At Sobek Central, with the incorporation of the new Rosita properties to the east of Sobek Central, it brings us closer and about 3 kilometers to the west of Filo del Sol. And of course, Jose Maria is off to the east and Los Helados to the north. So this is a well-recognized Mayo-Pliocene aged mineral belt in northern Chile. So with the Sobek property, we're just over 11,000, and the Ernie and Rosita property was SQM 11.5. So we've got a good-sized property put together at the moment. This is prospective, obviously, for copper porphyries, high sulfidation, epithermal gold, as we're seeing across the border in the various projects, and also in Chile up in the north in Los Helados. So this was, as I showed you on one of the first slides, staked based on the prospective local geology and the structural architecture of the area. Now this is obviously high Andes. We're between 4,004 and up over 5,000. I call it fairly easy altitude. It's only a 3-hour drive from Copiapó, which is the main mining hub in central Chile. and we come down a highway, about 114 kilometers of paved road to get to the entrance of the property, and then we take a 40-kilometer road right into the center of Sobek Central, and that's a well-maintained gravel road because actually the Lundin Group of companies does use that road coming in from Chile to get up to their properties in Argentina. So it's high altitude, but it's easy access. You have seen our AirMag on previous presentations, obviously, but now with the incorporation of the SQM Rosita package, we can incorporate more information here, and you can see the helicopter-based AirMag that we did back in 2021. Before we even set boots on the ground, we did a large AirMag survey. So now we've been able to incorporate that information in the Rosita package. You can see the little white X's on the AirMag, which are kind of areas of elevated interest that we'll be following up, and we are currently following up, obviously, in our Sobek package. On the right-hand side there, you can see we have some interesting information on alteration systems from our imaging that we'll be following up as we move forward with the Rosita package. But as I mentioned, we can move this forward a fairly relaxed, evaluate the properties in time. We're going to certainly concentrate on the Sobek area at the moment. One of the important aspects of our regional AirMag survey was this very large and obviously structurally controlled magnetic high regime. And you can see it goes all the way across the border to the Filo del Sol project. And with the incorporation of our Rosita, SQM Rosita, that big high resides in Sobek Central, and these ones over here actually reside in the Rosita block of claims. So it's good that now we're starting to consolidate that entire area that we find extremely interesting, magnetically speaking. Just kind of an overall photo look at Sobek Central. The picture on the left, we're actually up in the southwest, looking at all the hills in the foreground are actually within the Sobek Central block. Out behind that on the border, straddling Chile and Argentina, that's where Filo del Sol resides. And off to the left and further north, you'd be going up towards Lunahuasi. On the right-hand side, you can see the prospects we've currently delineated at Sobek Central, starting with the green wall structure, which we did publish some results earlier on in our early days of exploration here. The green wall produced some pretty incredible copper values from a narrow intrusive dike injected into the red bed sediments here. Probably doesn't represent a target on its own right, but certainly I'm considering both the green wall and the Greta Verde over here as leakage. Where's that copper being sourced from? And we're betting and hoping that it'll be from either the collapse zone here, the lower elevations underneath the central breccia, or up at the vein zone. Now, most of our work at the moment is at Sobek Central is being concentrated up at the vein zone. In the early days, we did walk-up prospecting campaigns, and actually we're quite encouraged with the results coming off that in the early days. So over a gram gold, high anomalous background silver. Some of the last campaigns prior to the road, we actually pulled off samples up to 5 grams of gold and 0.22% copper from these typical, I call it Maricunga type stacked up sheeted vein systems. These are typical quartz magnetite veins that are typical in the Maricunga porphyries. And those actually are pretty high grade samples for that type of mineralization. You can also see here in the microscopic work, we're getting some nice native gold flecks in those veins as well. So that was very encouraging. Now we do have our road going all the way up the hill, up to the higher level VN-zone. You can see there's about 7 kilometers worth of road construction getting up into the high altitudes. That's around 4,007, 4,008 up here at the vein zone where we pulled off those original high-grade samples. So up here we're seeing, a zone of strong localized phyllic and alteration with quartz magnetite veining along the road cut. That road was very helpful. It acted as a trench, so we did some detail mapping, detail sampling, waiting for those results. But things looked interesting there, and that's where the select samples came from with the 5 grams and the 0.22 copper. The structure is open, and it appears to be increasing. The alteration and vein density is increasing out towards the southeast. So that's very important. We've incorporated the Rosita property from SQM because that's the next property south of Sobek Central. So we'll be anxious to get in there and continue to work this prospect up to the south. This is just an aerial picture of the road, and it actually continues further down here through that alteration and onto the other side. And along the road cut, you're seeing these typical Maricguna type blackish quartz magnetite veins that are hosting the strong copper and gold mineralization. With the incorporation of the Rosita package to the west, you will recall in several presentations I put up my MT response 1 and 2. Now with the incorporation of the Rosita package, you can see here is the MT responses 1 and 2, and now we've moved our package into Rosita, and there's a third MT response. It's actually called the fourth because the third one is up in Potro and Sobek North. But I'm very excited to have that new MT anomaly incorporated because it's actually larger and it's one of the strongest MT responses we have now. So I think I'm happy to call this a cluster. I couldn't call it a cluster with 2, but I think I can with 3. So now we've got a nice cluster of MT anomalies that we're working up. If you recall from previous presentations, on our responses on the east side here, our zones like the vein zone north and the central breccia were occurring along the cusps of these MT anomalies. Now, I think these probably represent deep-seated intrusive centers. Now, whether the relationship here is strictly coincidental or geological, we'll certainly find out as we move these prospects forward with the drilling that's upcoming. So it's good to have all those clusters now together. Just looking a little bit, fairly preliminary geology on the vein zone itself. What we're happy to be seeing is a package of dacitic, both volcanics and hypoabyssal intrusives associated with different types of breccia, both hydrothermal and crackle breccias, which is good to see. It's the right geology, and it seems to be hosted in these almost north-south, but slightly northwest trending structural corridor. And that, as I said, continues further south. But the geology is ripe for these type of Maricguna type porphyry deposits. The first area we think will be drilling before the end of this season is at the VN-zone, and this is where we pulled off the high-grade gold and copper samples. And you can see here, this is a theoretical hole at the moment, but basically drilling underneath the high geochem, thinking we have a neck here with those sheeted quartz magnetite veins. So we're putting a hole in here. That's actually the vein zone on the cusp of our MT response 2. If our MT is correct, we have interesting alteration on either side of that neck, a strong area of resistivity in the MT. We went in there just recently with our in-house IP system, and I'm quite pleased with the results. Actually, you can see on the resistivity, we've got an extremely high resistor of 30,000. Obviously, a pretty clear structural control, some sort of a cap here as well. And the chargeability a little further deeper, it looks like it's a reasonable chargeability high, so it could represent the pyritic halo of a deeper seated porphyry, and this could represent maybe the high sulfidation system on top. So this is one of the targets we'll be certainly moving forward for drill testing. We can test that resistor with a hole of about 350 meters deep. And to get down into the chargeability and below, we'd have to go around 500. But that's an interesting coincident anomaly with the chargeability and the resistivity. And what's interesting here is obviously there's structural control in the resistive data and maybe the chargeability data, which represents the pyritic halo, which has been overprinted on all the geology, and you don't see any structural controls here. It's just a big cloud of chargeability. Looking, as I mentioned, things appear to be getting stronger and trending to the south. So we're still here on the vein zone. You can see on the first MT line, which I showed you underneath the vein zone, as we move south, we're getting MT targets with really quite well-defined bodies at depth. So this could certainly represent an intrusive body with an alteration halo. It's potentially, it's very conductive and could represent a porphyry intrusion. So these are the targets we'll be following through. The same geology that we see at the vein zone continues through further south, and we're getting a cluster of these dacitic hypoabyssal intrusives and the hydrothermal breccias. So it's coming together quite nicely, and obviously we'd like to continue further south with our in-house IP as well and see if we can map out those trends further south. We had planned to be potentially drilling around the 1st of March, but El Nino has been very active in the high Andes this year. It hasn't only affected us, but it's affected our neighbors as well, up in the Vicuña district and elsewhere. You can say you see these late snowfalls, probably related to the Bolivian winter, but a lot of snowfall up in the high altitudes at Sobek Central in the vein zone. This is going up into El Potro. There was extremely high temperatures, unseasonal high temperatures up in the high Andes, lots of snow melt, lots of the rivers were actually, the creeks turned into rivers. We had lots of our roads cut. This is our neighbors here trying to get into their property, trying to get the semis to come across these engorged rivers unsuccessfully, have to get pulled out. So it's been a challenging, I guess, for the last 3 weeks. So obviously that did actually result in a suspension of activities and significant impact on our timeline. But things have certainly, I guess, cooled down a little bit now, and things are getting back to normal. And we actually have remobilized our crews back to site to continue the work at the project. So at Sobek Central, this quick review, we did complete, as you saw, the access road up to the VN-zone. That road served as a trench to expose the mineralized sheeted veins and alteration. So we've been up there before we got chased out by the inclement weather, doing geological and structural mapping, and obviously lots of sampling along the road cut and structural mapping, geochemical sampling, and also alteration and analysis. The stream sediment sampling program and prospecting on the Rosita block will get started up. We are doing IP ground geophysics to refine targets. I showed you the first lines we did. We want to do more, obviously, at Sobek Central. And we obviously want to get up and continue that maiden drill program that we were chased off last winter at the VN-zone. So I think probably looking at the time of season we're probably looking at about 1,500 meters in 2 or 3 holes up there. So we are at the moment refining the drill targets for final evaluation. Now, if we move up to Sobek North and particularly what we call El Potro, which is in the southeast corner of Sobek North, and that resides about 3 kilometers to the west of NGX's Lunahuasi, where they're currently up there undertaking a 15,000 meter drill program. We have seen results flowing out of there. Very interesting results at the Lunahuasi. Now, what brought us into this corner was the corner of the claim block was actually our stream sediment samples. We do an overall stream sediment campaign on all our projects, and you can see here we got a pretty good copper, gold, and silver anomaly in the stream sediments. So we went back in there to follow up with prospecting and geological mapping. What we're seeing here in the corner is what appears to be younger intrusives coming through the Paleocene rocks, the granitoid rocks of the Paleocene in that corner of the project. And those rocks display coarse pyrite and chalcopyrite and coarse molybdenite, which is kind of typical porphyry mineralization. And then over here where we're getting our gold and our silver, looks a little bit more like a high sulfidation environment. And this area is actually about 450 meters higher up in elevation above these rocks. So you're working to the east and you're going up elevation, and you're climbing quite steeply to an elevation about 450 meters higher than where we're seeing these mineralized intrusives. So that looks much more like a high sulfidation type of geochemical signature up there. It is partially covered by Cretaceous rocks, so we're getting mineralization around the edges. We did our MT survey at Sobek Central. We completed it, and I had some aircraft time left over. So I flew about 13 square kilometers over here in the corner of El Potro. And again, we're getting maybe somewhat less distinct, but we're getting these elliptical anomalies again. What's interesting here is within that elliptical anomaly, that's where we're getting our high copper and our high moly. And then as we get out to the east and higher up, that's where we're getting into our more gold, silver rich epithermal environment, high sulfidation epithermal by the looks of it. So that's an interesting relationship. And if you look on the right, this is our MT line that crosses the area, and obviously it's easy to see a very notorious resistor, a nice, looks like a potentially an altered intrusion or a high sulfidation breccia that's coming up here. It looks like a block faulted block here, and this resides directly underneath our high gold and silver samples. So that's obviously a very intriguing target. That resides about 500 meters below surface, where you see the arrow, to get to the top of that anomaly. We're currently on our way back in there, and we're going to apply our in-house IP pole-dipole geophysics again across this area to see if we can map out again, as we did at the vein zone, areas of interesting resistivity and hopefully chargeability as well, to help us focus our drilling here at Potro. Now the idea is we're getting late in the system, so once we finish the geophysics here at El Potro, we're going to basically compare the vein zone to El Potro and see which one looks the best and deserves the first drill holes for the remainder of this season. So up at Potro, we've obviously got our environmental clearance at Sobek North, particularly El Potro. There was an old road going in there. We got that existing road cleaned up, and we've actually put a new road into the El Potro East Zone. Just recently, we put that road in before the flooding started, and it was good to see that that road did actually cut some interesting copper mineralized fractures and veinlets in a strongly altered clay altered rock. We haven't been able to get back to it, so we're putting that road back in as we speak, and we'll be able to get up there and analyze that mineralization, that alteration, and also get the geophysics done. So we want to continue that detailed geological mapping and sampling of that, what I'm calling high sulfidation zone up at Potro East. I think we want to generate an exploration model for the high-grade gold and silver area, and obviously base that on the Lunahuasi model and see if it holds together. As I said, the geophysical IP surveys, we're starting out with gradient array, and we'll follow up in the anomalous areas with pole-dipole, and that's to test the upper zones of that high sulfidation anomaly that we saw. About 500 meters to the top of it, and probably down into 700 meters into the guts of it. So we're again here finding drill targets for final evaluation and to compare against the vein zone to see where we mobilize the drill to. Just a quick mention, actually, for Mirasol does have an extensive project portfolio. We're focused 100% at the moment in Sobek, and now with the incorporation of Rosita. But the portfolio is very deep as well. And on the right side, you can see a list of properties, and any one of those could also produce a significant discovery. They could actually standalone properties within the portfolio. So as we move forward in time, we'll be moving those projects forward either with self-funded exploration. We may bring in partnerships on some of them. So there's lots to do here apart from Sobek, but Sobek is our focus at the moment, without doubt. And down the Virginia silver deposit, there's no field work going on. We have been moving forward. We did that updated resource estimate, and now we're doing some metallurgy on the halo of that deposit. So hopefully we'll be able to report some good news in the future from those studies as well.
I think to start off our conversation, Tim, I mean, tell us about your career from the start, when you co-founded Mirasol up until that point, and your journey through Mirasol now, because you've transitioned from a kind of PG and partnership model in Mirasol over the decades here now to have some core, high conviction, 100% owned ideas. So it's a transition. So talk us through that as well.
It certainly is. Well, Mirasol, we actually, the group of founders, as I briefly mentioned, had worked in these jurisdictions for cumulative decades prior to the formation of Mirasol. So we actually formed Mirasol in 2003. 3 original founders. I'm the only founder currently residing in the company. In 2005, we went public. So we've been public for a long time. We were born and raised basically as a project generator. So the typical project generation and joint venture model was applied within the company from its inception, probably up through to 2016. We generated a large portfolio of projects, and several of those projects still form an important part of that portfolio. And obviously Sobek is one of them, and Sobek was actually one of the latter generated projects of our project generation infancy. Since that time, I think the strategy has changed a little bit from project generator into an actual more conventional exploration company, and even thinking down the line, potentially development company with some of the projects we have. So we're certainly more willing to put more time and money into our projects and move them forward much further than historically was the norm in Mirasol. So that's an exciting change, and I think our current focus on Sobek is a good example of how we're working these days, is to grab onto these high potential projects and push them forward and do as much exploration as we can, and with that focus on discovery, obviously.
So Tim, one thing we always like to ask, how much, it's all about incentives and these things, right? So how much of your net wealth would you say is invested with the company, and generally also more broadly, how do you incentivize your technical team and all other important technical people involved in the company to really be incentivized to drive shareholder value?
Yeah, obviously we have what I believe is a very generous incentive program, based on options and RSUs for basically every employee in the company. It's not just management, and I feel very strongly about this. Our people on the ground have to be incentivized, and not just the geological and technical people, but actually the people that are in the offices down here in South America as well. You know, the the accounting department, the administration department, from everybody in the company plays a role in the discovery process. So everybody isn't incentivized. Obviously, I've got a significant play in the money in the game in here in Mirasol as well, from being a founder and being part of the company since 2003. That's 20 years with the company. So I think that may be some sort of a record in the junior mining industry, 20 years in the same company, which is exciting for me.
Yeah, that speaks more than anything else to your dedication. So that's very important to highlight. First of all, when do you plan to start drilling? I mean, is that a month out now, or 6 weeks, or?
Yeah, I'm certainly. I was saying we're probably 3 weeks behind schedule, thanks to our little friend El Nino. But I'm at the moment I'm pressing towards mid-March, and that still gives us, mid-March going forward gives us ample time to complete what we want to complete. Weather holds true, and we can move forward with the current plans ahead of us. And that, all importantly is being able to get into El Potro, get that ground geophysics done, and be able to compare the vein zone in El Potro and make a technical decision on which ones get the holes first.
If you don't have time to do the IP at El Potro, you will default to doing VN-zone. Is VN ready right now, and now you're holding off to see if you're going to prefer El Potro, to prioritize El Potro over VN-zone? Is that the situation?
Yeah, they're both looking very, very good. And the final thing that had to be done, and the geophysical crews are on the way up the hill, so I think we'll be in a timely fashion get that IP on the ground crews finishing up that IP survey and gradient array survey in Potro in my new timeline to be able to be ready by mid-March or shortly after to make that decision. We'd also like to continue to move the work at vein zone further south. As I said, we were seeing that in the vein zone the system is there, but appears to be getting stronger as we move a little further south. I'm focused on making sure we drill the best targets this system, or this season. So we want to make sure we have enough information on hand to make those technical decisions to put the drill in the right place before the end of the season.
I mean, you currently have all the information for VN-zone. You're not going to get anything new before you potentially drill in just a couple of weeks here. So it's El Potro that you might get some information. What would you want to see from the IP to make the decision to prioritize El Potro over VN-zone?
Yeah, what the IP, hopefully what the IP will do will generate some attractive IP anomalies. We're mapping it out first with gradient array, and then you go in there over the strongest anomalies and do pole dipole to get better depth resolution. And we're looking there. We've got that very nice intrusive mushroom-shaped MT resistor. So in MT you don't get chargeability. So it's nice to get chargeability readings. That shows you mapping out your sulfides in the subsurface. So I think chargeability, we'll see if we get some sort of a chargeability halo around that MT anomaly. We'd like to get some definition maybe on the resistivity, get some structural information from the IP, as we saw clearly at the vein zone, that resistivity mapped out nicely what looks to be controlling structures. So those type of things are certainly applicable up at El Potro as well. Trying to get that same type of information.
And for this year, the remainder of this year, what kind of non-Vicuña related spend or do you have, except G&A? G&A should be at around maybe 4 million CA per annum, but what would the non-related Vicuña spend be? Do you have anything planned, or is it
we're
just maintaining the portfolio?
yeah, just maintaining the portfolio, maintaining everything intact, and our on the ground spend is going to be focused in Sobek to the end of the season.
Yeah. So when the next season starts, which will be in September or somewhere on there,
Yeah,
what kind of cash? Yeah, go ahead.
what kind of cash position?
Yeah, will you have by then? Obviously, you will raise somehow in the interim, but at the end of this season, what cash position will you have? It will be quite thin.
Well, yeah,
Technically.
we'll be a little bit thin, so we'll want to obviously, and hopefully based on good results from this season's activities, be able to raise to be go into next season with the treasury topped up.
Yeah, or as Patrick outlined, figure it out in other creative
There's
ways.
various
But
there's various ways of actually financing considerations how we could do it, but somewhere in that realm of options, make sure we're coming into September, October, ready to finance hopefully an aggressive program next season.
okay, so we're here with Patrick, and I think it serves everyone well to hear about yourself, Patrick, your career prior to Mirasol, and how you came to be involved, and what your role has been with the company up until now.
Thank you, Gorm. I've been in the mining business for about 30 years now. Started with Placidome, which was Canada's second largest gold producer that was acquired by Barrick. But I've been in the junior sector for about 25 years. And what we've sought to do in the junior sector is simply create shareholder value through exploration. There's no more sensational way to create value than through successful exploration. So in the last 25 odd years, I've been CEO of about half a dozen Canadian junior companies. In two cases, we built mines. We built a platinum mine in South Africa and a diamond mine in Canada's Northwest Territories. But in all the other cases, we've acquired assets and very simply taken them through up the value chain through resource delineation, engineering studies, permitting. And in the case of 7 companies that I've been associated with, some as chief executive officer and others as non-executive director, on that journey between resource delineation and construction, in 7 cases, we've had very successful M&A transactions. And I'll mention just a couple of them to you because I think they relate to Mirasol. So in one instance, Canadian junior company called Weda Bay Minerals, sitting on the world's largest nickel laterite project in eastern Indonesia. We just started taking it through a pre-feasibility study. The market cap was about 25 million Canadian, and Eramet, the French nickel giant, acquired the company for about 240 million. And Eramet has since gone on, together with a Chinese partner, to build the Weda Bay nickel mine, which is now one of the world's largest nickel producers. It's a 50-year mine. And many people wonder what's happening to nickel, the price of nickel. One of the reasons that nickel is suffering is because of this exploding supply from Indonesia, from nickel laterite operations, and Weda Bay is the biggest. One more example, which relates more to Mirasol, I think. Rio Tinto made the discovery of the Constancia copper project in Peru. In fact, it's one of Mirasol's directors who made the discovery, Tim Moody. And Rio thought it was too small for them. So they optioned it to a junior company that I ran. We took it through resource, feasibility, permitting. We had optioned it for $12 million. And 3 years later, Hudbay Minerals bought it from us for $540 million. So these are extraordinary transactions where shareholders are rewarded for success. The key thing here is that all of the assets that we've been involved with and all of the assets that Mirasol has have the potential to become mines. These are not highly speculative shots in the dark. These are very well-defined giant copper porphyry projects in Chile, together with a high-grade, small but high-grade silver deposit in Argentina. Any one of these, all of these projects have the potential to become mines. Now, what's particularly special and what your viewers will want to know about is Mirasol's Sobek project in the Vicuña district, immediately adjacent to Filo's project, Filo del Sol, and also immediately adjacent to NGEX's project, Lunahasi. These are two Lundin companies, as you know, and they have each made spectacular discoveries in this Vicuña district. 3 years ago, both Filo Mining and NGEX were trading below $2 a share. Now Filo's trading at over $20 a share, and NGEX is trading around $8 a share, based on discoveries. The market cap of Filo is about $2.5 billion. The market cap of NGEX is about $1.5 billion, so about $4 billion in combined value. The market cap of Mirasol is about $50 million. Now, we're pre-discovery, but Sobek is a project that we've had for more than 6 years, and it's a project that we will be drilling within the next couple of months to make a discovery. And we're 3 kilometers from Filo del Sol, and we're 3 kilometers from NGEX's discovery at Lunahasi. So geologically, we are right next door to them. The key thing about Mirasol is we've been around for more than 20 years. Originally, Mirasol was a project generator. We would stake projects and then seek to option them to producers. But today, Mirasol is just a conventional exploration company. We have projects that we're seeking to drill, to make discoveries that will support the development of a mine. Now, in the case of Filo, they have one project, Filo del Sol. In the case of NGEX, they've got 2 projects. They've got the Las Solades deposit, a low-grade underground deposit, and they've got the Lunahasi discovery, which is 3 kilometers from Sobek. In the case of Mirasol in Chile, we have 5 key projects. We've got Sobek, Ruby, Gorbea, Altazor, and Coronation. All of them are massive copper-gold porphyry projects. All of them have drill-ready targets. Now, our key focus, of course, is Sobek because it's in this Vicuña district. But the other 4 projects in Chile also have drill-ready targets. The impediment to a small company like Mirasol to being able to drill these projects, of course, is finance. We have a small treasury. As I said, we're about a $50 million company. We only have about $5 million in treasury. Drilling these projects in the high Andes of Chile is very expensive. It's about 5 times more expensive to drill there than it is to drill in Canada. So our ability to create value at all of these projects through drilling, through discovery, is impeded by a lack of capital. We've been very careful recently in making sure that when we do raise capital, We do it in the least dilutive way possible for shareholders. But we will obviously need to continue to raise capital to be able to test all of these massive copper gold porphyry targets.
Yes, and I think that's the crux of what I want to discuss with you today, because as Tim and I will have gone through quite rigorously. You don't lack interesting geology to explore, and you don't lack the competence to do it, but you do lack the capital. That's the rate limiting factor. So that's what we need to explore today.
Generally, in terms of the shareholding of Mirasol, it's very, very tight. The company's been around for, as I said, about 20 years, but we only have 65 million shares in issue. And we've never done a rollback. The major shareholder is John Tognetti. He's the former chairman of Haywood Securities in Vancouver, has a very close relationship with the Lundin family, was very close to Lucas Lundin before he passed away. Within Haywood Securities, the firm that he's associated with, there are probably about another half dozen brokers, investors who probably own collectively another 10 to 15% of the shares of Mirasol. There are other high net worth investors that probably own another 15 to 20%. So you could probably put half of Mirasol shareholders in the back of a taxi in Stockholm. It's that tight. Now, of course, the investors in the Lundin companies have done extraordinarily well through precisely what Mirasol is doing. And they have an understanding. They're very sophisticated when it comes to assessing these opportunities in these districts. And they have an opportunity to continue that success through Mirasol.
So I want to follow up on that. So this is very peculiar. How much does John own of the company? And you say John and his associates or previous associates, that kind of, a select group of people owns almost a majority of the stock. That creates a tight shareholder structure, and it also protects you, right, from bigger fish that you've mentioned. And I'm sure that's also, an aspect of this. Could you give some color to that? Because if you truly have extremely interesting properties, surely everyone and their mother would want to acquire them, right? But you have this lock to prevent that from happening. Could you give some color on that?
Certainly. And look, in about, I think it was November, December 2020, within the space of about 3 weeks, 3 different companies made unsolicited bids to acquire Mirasol. One of them was a Lundin company. I can't mention the specific name, but one of them was a Lundin company. And it was very curious to us why all of these unsolicited bids came within weeks of each other. And all of them were zero premium offers. We will acquire your company at the market cap, no premium. All of them were cash offers. And of course, the board of Mirasol fulfilled its fiduciary duty. We reviewed them, and then we politely declined all 3 of the offers. Since then, our market cap has doubled. And before the recent sell-off in the junior sector, it had tripled to over $1.20 a share. Now, given the quality of the assets we have and the location in Chile, tier 1 mining jurisdiction, yes, there's a great deal of interest on the part of producers to participate in our projects. And we have, in the last number of months, we've reached out to producers to see if we can get them to fund our drill programs. Because as I mentioned, we got a small treasury, about $5 million, that enables us to fund Sobek, drilling at Sobek. but we've got 4 other projects in Chile that we would like to drill now, and we don't have the funds to do it. So we've proposed to these major companies that they take private placements in Mirasol, and that we will use the funds from those private placements to drill very specific targets that we agree on with them. We don't yet have an agreement with any of those producers. We remain hopeful that we will be able to get an agreement with one of them or more of them to be able to drill some of the other projects. There's always a risk that a intermediate or senior producer is going to make an unsolicited bid for Mirasol. Our market cap, as I said, is 50 million. It's tiny in relation to the quality, the size and quality of the assets we have. There's always a risk, but through this very tight shareholding, we're protected. And I frankly don't think that there would be a desire on the part of the major shareholders of Mirasol to accept even a modest, even a generous premium to the current market price. I think we're trading at about 50 or 60 cents. We were trading over $1 6 months ago. I don't think there would be an interest in accepting even a generous premium to the market price. Mirasol has the capacity, through discovery, drilling on any one of the 5 projects in Chile that I've mentioned, to grow the market cap from 50 million to 500 million through one drill hole. And that happened at Filo del Sol. One drill hole, and the share price went from under $3 to $9 overnight. At NGEX, one drill hole at Lunahasi, and the share price went from about $2 to $5. Similarly, one drill hole on any one of Mirasol's projects can take this share price from 50 cents to $5. So the best way for us to create shareholder value is by drilling and making a discovery. We simply need access to the capital to be able to do that.
Yes. One thing, before we get back to the strategic discussion, just to clarify, what would your annual burn rate be if you were not to be drilling? Just to clarify what kind of baseline costs of the business are.
If we didn't drill at all and we just maintained our current staff structure, which is very tight, our burn rate would be about $4 million a year.
And that's Canadian dollars, right?
Canadian dollars. And that's, of course, principally maintaining payments to keep our properties, our leases, and things like that. Being able to keep the staff. Many of the staff have been with us for over 10 years. Our CEO, Tim Heenan, has been with the company since the very beginning, 20 years ago. The real value we have is, of course, with the people. And if we did not drill, we would make sure we kept the people.
So you mentioned this. I mean, you have Ruby, you have Altasol, you have Cornerstone, all of these interesting projects. I mean, Sobek, you're going to deploy or the Vicuña assets now with the recent announcement of consolidation or potential to earn into these other adjacent properties. But the other, so to speak, non-core, they're still extremely promising. If you can drill them, there's big potential there. How do you actually structure a deal? You said it could be private placements, so these companies would come in and you would structure a contract where the funds, they will get equity in Mirasol and you will receive funds and you have to deploy them drilling into the assets. Why would these companies be interested in getting exposure through equity and not some kind of joint venture and direct ownership into the assets?
Well, they would be interested in that. That's what they prefer, but we're not interested in that. And we're the one who've got the assets.
Yes.
Typically what happens, a junior company like Mirasol, and Mirasol did this in the past, is if you have a project, let's take like Ruby, you would go to a major, let's say Tech or Barrick, and you would say, I'll option it to you. And then, they would have 5 years or 7 years to work on it and make a discovery. that's unattractive to us. So what we're saying to these producers is, you take a private placement in Mirasol to drill Ruby, all of the funds will go to drilling Ruby, and you then have a right of first refusal to participate in a joint venture with Mirasol if a discovery is made at Ruby. Not an obligation, but a right of first refusal. So, of course, they don't like it. This puts us, on a level playing field with them. But that's the deal that's on the table. And the major producers are flush with cash. What they need are assets, projects like Mirasol's projects. There are fewer projects like Mirasol's projects than there are producers who are looking for them. So this is the deal. If one of these major producers doesn't like that deal, we move on to somebody else.
When you give them the right of first refusal, is it structured as such, or would it be that there are no terms about the joint venture up front, or would there be some clauses that could give some kind of range of what they could expect once a discovery is made, or completely flexible?
50-50 JV.
Okay.
Participating 50-50 JV. But the details, other than you have the right of first refusal to joint venture the project with us on the basis of 50-50, fully participating. The remaining details for a joint venture agreement would be negotiated between the parties. If one of the producers decided, yes, they did want to do this, they did want to take a private placement in Mirasol, they did want us to drill. What we're kind of saying to them, Gorm, is let's not put the cart before the horse. This is the outline of a relationship. If we make a discovery, then let's sit down and negotiate the details. Let's not go and hire lawyers to negotiate the details now before we've made a discovery.
What kind of, could you get a premium for the private placement, or just
yes.
There is yeah.
No, they couldn't do it at market. It would be at a premium to market. Yeah, no question.
Because this entire thing obviously is a structure where you can build momentum, which is what you want to do, right? You can get the upfront funds, and then you can build the momentum, and then you can transition to it becoming, because either way, it's the discovery holes that makes the biggest difference, and then you get into the more capital intense delineation. Maybe the next hole might be a little bit worse. It happens all the time. So I like that structure. What would you say is the probability of that being crystallized for one of these very large scale projects that we mentioned in the coming year?
Within the coming year, on Sobek, 100%. Within the time frame of the coming year, first of all, I'm confident that on the other 4 projects in Chile, we will make a discovery. I don't know what the size will be. I don't know what the grade will be. That's in God's hands. But we will make a discovery. Based on the work that we've done, we have a very, very high level of confidence we'll make a discovery. But in order to make that discovery within the next year, we need the capital. Uh-huh. So, if the Swedish investors, want to diversify from their current exposure, if they want to, in a sense, have a second bite at the cherry, come into a company that's got a 50 million market cap that can grow to 500 million, Mirasol's the only real opportunity for that. And Gorm, I gave you a couple of examples. Weda Bay Minerals that I was CEO of, and Norsemont that I was senior CEO of. Norsemont, we had one project, Constancia Copper in Peru. We bought it for 12 million. 3 years later, we sold it for 540 million. Any one of the 5 projects in Chile that Mirasol has have the potential to support a company with a $500 million market cap. Any one of them. So if more than one, we could quite easily approach the market cap of NGEX. NGEX has 2 projects, Los Helados and Lunahasi, 1.5 billion market cap. We could quite easily approach that, and that's where the value is for an investor in Mirasol, is to see this exponential growth in value through one drill hole making a discovery.
So, which I understand, because Sobek is obviously, you have a very powerful narrative there. I mean, success, a drill hole will be rewarded if you see some good results, because you have a super powerful narrative behind that. The other projects, yes, if it's good, it's going to be rewarded either way. We see that in the market. Porphyries are rewarded when they are strong. But are you open-minded to potentially structure some kind of deal to secure funds to advance Sobek? Because obviously you will need, when the next season starts this fall, you will need to have raised some money somehow to advance Sobek further before then. Do you see some kind of structure being done there where maybe one of the licenses at Sobek, obviously you have Central, you have South, you have North, you have the new ones now as well. How would that look? What would that look like hypothetically? Would you say, would it be the entire thing, or a partial sort of arrangement?
I'm not sure I understood, Gorm. Could you ask the question again?
Yeah. So I mean, with Sobek, are you open-minded to having one of these structures where you would have a private placement at a premium? No.
Good question. We're going into a very large mining conference next week that's hosted by the Bank of Montreal, annual metals and mining conference. And I will be having some meetings with some companies that are very active in the area around Sobek. And yes, I would like to go it alone at Sobek, but it's expensive. And if one of these companies wants to participate in Sobek in some fashion, we have to consider it. I'm not one of these people who hangs on to a project and says, I'm not prepared to share it. If there's value for shareholders in bringing in a partner, then we must look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, but because obviously it's obvious to everyone, and I think that's what the market is. With the backdrop of the market being tough, everyone realizes you will need to raise funds. Once these 2 to 3 holes are drilled at the VN-zone, you will need to be able to raise funds again. So that's gonna that's a certainty. It needs to happen. So let's say in a scenario where you don't hit immediately, which happens all the time, right? You might get more information, you might get closer, but you didn't hit mineralization. Market cap won't move. It's gonna be, let's say it's the same valuation approximately as we're seeing now. In that situation, then I mean, obviously you need to have backup plans, not just being reliant on retail investors coming in, or obviously you have half the book spoken for probably, but nevertheless. So what you would consider this then? That would be, what would be the timing of this? Would you wait to let VN come out, or obviously it's a tricky thing but the game theory behind it would be interesting to hear.
It is, and look, I like to say that after hydrogen, the most common thing in the atmosphere is money. There are pools of capital available in a whole variety of places. All of our projects are unencumbered with royalties. So our ability, for example, to sell a royalty on any one or all of those projects is very good. And I'm talking about a 1 or 2% royalty, not a significant royalty. So if push comes to shove, the equity markets remain closed, and we need capital to continue drilling, we can always resort to the royalty market. That's very quick and easy. However, because of what you mentioned, we've got half of any deal is spoken for. The shareholders who are invested in Mirasol, the major shareholders, maybe half a dozen people, they will write checks for us. And if we need $5 million or $10 million, they will write checks for us. in the context of their wealth, that would not be a significant investment or commitment to make.
I mean, you have the potential to have a bona fide discovery at the VN-zone with these 2 to 3 holes you're drilling. In that scenario, it would have been a shame to structure something where you would have a joint venture right of first refusal on Sobek before that. So is the plan to hold off, see what those holes will tell you, and then you're going to potentially, go to plan B and sell a royalty if VN doesn't make the market react? Because the base case is success at VN-zone, and then you can normal raise at a higher share price, right?
You're spot on, Gorm. We have the resources, we have the cash to drill at the VN-zone. We're going to drill at the VN-zone this season. So before the end of May, we will be drilling there. It would be foolish of us to go to the equity markets to seek a joint venture partner or sell a royalty before we've drilled those holes. And we have a very high level of confidence we will make a discovery. Size and grade to be determined, but we will make a discovery.
Yes. And what's the ballpark for the next race, would you say? What would you ideally want to see? Obviously, it varies depending on the conditions that you have, but what would be kind of an ideal setup going into the next season? Because now you have these new properties as well at Sobek. I mean, you have more ideas and high quality ideas to test than you can execute. So what would be your ideal outcome sort of for this fall?
Minimum $5 million, which is 10% of our current market cap. Maximum $10 million. That would, in my view, would give us sufficient financial resources to be able to recommence drilling in spring in South America, which is about September, October, and then keep going through to 2025.
Yes, and that allows you to test 3, 4, 5 new targets again in Sobek and at El Potro, for example, and I'll speak with Tim now to learn if any of the partnership licenses are drill ready as well. That might be of interest, but that's certainly great. I want to pick your brain on what you believe to be the end game for the district, and this is very zooming out on the chessboard and seeing, because it will be relevant for you. You're committed to Sobek. You're confident you're going to make a discovery, and you have structured these deals before. What kind of scenarios do you see happening down the line for one of your discoveries in the district?
The key thing is creating that shareholder value, maximizing that shareholder value. So we must go it alone for as long as we can, without being stupid. Of course, we must try and retain 100% for as long as we can to take it up the value curve. Philo and NGEX are our neighbors, and they are the most immediate examples. Sub $100 million companies that turn into billion-dollar companies based on just a few drill holes. So the end game for us is make a discovery, continue to advance it independently for as long as we can until it becomes apparent that we can't build this mine by ourselves. Now, I've built 2 mines, but building a mine at Sobek is going to require a senior partner. The ideal for me would be a joint venture. And let's say, for example, we've made a discovery. Let's say that Mirasol's market cap is $500 million. We need to build a mine that's going to cost, just by way of example, $1 billion. A senior producer comes in, buys half the asset for $500 million. And that covers our share of the capital to build the mine, and we remain 50-50 joint venture partners. Now, the immediate question you will ask is, well, why would they buy half the asset for $500 million if your market cap's only $500 million? Well, of course, if they could buy the company, they'll buy the company because it's cheaper and they get 100% of the asset. The company is not for sale. People who control more than 50% of the shares are not prepared to sell the company. So they cannot buy the company. The only option is to joint venture with us. To create maximum shareholder value, short, medium, and long term, make a discovery, advance it independently, joint venture into development, cash flow. And then we would see, you build a company on that. Then you see something like Lundin Mining. Lundin Mining started with one mine. Then you see a generational company like Lundin Mining being developed around a world-class asset. But we have 4 others in Chile. If we are lucky, we've worked hard. But as the South African golfer used to say, the harder you work, the luckier you get. We've worked hard. If we're lucky and we make a discovery on all 5 of those projects, it would be extraordinary for Mirasol shareholders.
Would you consider adopting the NGX spin-out model? Obviously, it's been very successful. Is that something that you would consider doing? Let's say you find a bona fide discovery at Sobek Central, you spin that out, and that's a new vehicle moving into development, the delineation, and you continue with your extensive kind of discovery pipeline, because it won't take a year. It's going to take 5 years, 6, 7 years to prove all of these things out, most likely.
It's certainly a possibility. For a tiny company like Mirasol to manage, let's say, discoveries on all 5 projects would be a challenge. So, for example, one of our projects, Coronation, massive copper porphyry project. It sits right next door to First Quantum's Van der Waal discovery. Van der Waal is on the Argentine side of the border, and Coronation, our project, 100%, Mirasol, is on the Chilean side of the border. It's the same geological structure. The difference is that at our project, Coronation, the ore outcrops, and at Van der Waal, it's underground. So if we make a discovery at Coronation, then there may be merit in doing a deal with First Quantum to combine these 2 projects, Van der Waal in Argentina and Coronation in Chile. That's certainly a possibility. And First Quantum are fantastic mine builders. What that would look like, because you're quite right, it'll take 5 to 10 years to build a mine. What that would look like is impossible to say, but we would have to be open-minded about that, provided it offered that return for shareholders.
Let's get into the geology. We have El Potro and we have the VN-zone, right? And now you're waiting to get all the information you can to decide which one you're going to go for. If we think about it conceptually, like what would a good hole at El Potro look like? What would a good hole at VN-zone look like? And also take into consideration the time that you actually have to drill. You have until, say, mid-May, right? That's when you're going to have
conservatively, because if you remember, Gorm, last year, we actually came down from the hill on the 15th of June.
Okay, so let's say the entirety of May. So you would have 2.5 months to drill, something around like 10 weeks. So in a week with one rig, how many meters can you do? First of all,
the average in the district at the moment, looking at Filo and Lunahuasi, and what we used is about 30 meters a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 210 per week.
So you throw 1,000 meters on a month. It could be higher. At the moment, apparently they're drilling in a property called Puquenes, just south of Aldebaran in the high Andes, and their average has been closer to 50. But we'd like to, realistic and not overly generous and stick to about 30. If we get better, then that's all the better.
So range of outcome in terms of meterage would be like 1,500 to just about 2,000, somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
we
is where
were,
you're gonna
we were
come in.
yeah, we were talking. I was thinking it'd probably be tough to get more than 22, so we were talking between 1,500 and 2,000.
And the conceptual target for El Potro would be hit the intersecting actual mineralization. There could be some higher level expressions like veins or stuff like that above, but the size of the prize would be 500 meters vertically below surface. So
Yeah, that's according to our MT geophysics at the moment. The
Yes.
top of that anomaly is about 500 meters below surface.
So with that target, realistically, you would have to do one very deep hole. That would be the strategy there.
You'd want to
Get
get
into mineralization.
get down to your 500 meter level, and hopefully
just
you're seeing
continue.
what you see what you want to be seeing, and just keep it running. So you
Yeah.
could potentially run your hole down fairly deep, based on good visual results.
I mean, realistically, if the IP doesn't showcase some higher level expressions above that, that's the target. So
That's the target, because that's a very
Yeah.
attractive MT target. It sits right below, mineralization on surface. We have that Cretaceous cap, which is concealing a lot of the area, but we do have mineralization along the windowing on the edges of that. So, it looks like it's a very attractive target. And hopefully we can beef that up and focus a little bit better with our ground-based IP.
what would you say a successful discovery hole looks like at El Potro? What would you expect, taking the conceptual target in mind?
I would, looking at that MT at the moment, with the high resistivities that we have there, I would be inclined to think that we could potentially intersect a nice high sulfidation epithermal phreatic breccia, mineralized breccia of a high sulfidation epithermal character. That's what it looks like on the MT. With the IP, if we can see deep enough on the IP, we'll have a better idea as well. But at the moment, it looks like a big breccia body, high sulfidation epithermal breccia body.
I guess what I'm getting at, I feel like the risk might be there is that you drill that hole, get down to 600 meters, and you're not encountering mineralization. It might happen. You never know, right? There might be might be a red herring. It happens, I guess. So if that happens, then you're at El Potro. The target has been falsified, or at least potentially. What do you do then? You can't really. I mean, maybe you could go back to the VN-zone, or you're stuck there.
You could. No, there's no reason why we couldn't. But even at Potro, if we're not into strong, very clear mineralization, if we're into a good, strong hydrothermal system, a good, strong alteration, or proving that model that we're in a system. We're in a system. It doesn't have to be intensely mineralized on the first hole. I want to see us getting into a hydrothermal system. And
How long would it? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so we get that visual evidence in the hole. Obviously, we have our PXF pistols on the core as it comes out, and visually, we're going to know if we're into an interesting system or not.
To move between the Potro and VN-zone, how much time is lost? Getting set up and all of these things. I mean, effectively, how many days would you throw away doing that?
No,
moving the rig.
A few days. It's not far apart. The good roads coming down from Potro and going back up into the vein zone. Access between the two projects is pretty fluid.
So I mean, conceptually, one hole should be quite good to test at Potro. The VN-zone, there you have a clear hypothesis of different levels of expressions. You might have veins that come up as the highest levels expressions. You have a sulfidation zone a bit higher up, and then you have the porphyry sitting below, hypothetically. And you could potentially test all three with one hole, right?
Theoretically, yes. But you'd want to hit the sheeted veins. You don't want to drill those vertically. You want to hit them at an angle. So testing that upper part of the VN zone, if that's successful, then potentially relocate and go for the guts deeper down.
But it would be fair to say, I mean, due to you having a pretty clear idea in mind of there being higher levels of expression at the VN-zone, it's sort of cheaper to falsify or at least test that target. You will know earlier, hopefully, if you're into something or not, compared to Potro. Is that fair?
At Potro or at VN-zone?
At VN-zone, yeah.
Yeah. You as well with these sheeted vein zones, you want to make sure you've got a good understanding of the orientation. So you don't want to shoot a hole down to 500 meters to try to hit it the first time. You want to get a good grip on your orientation of the structural zones, and then follow it down.
So, can you explain the conceptual target? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because if you shoot at it too deep on the first, if your orientation is not fully understood, you could not get the ideal intersection.
Could you kind of explain what you're thinking of the morphology looking like with this VN-zone? Your feeling is that you have some sort of intrusion coming up quite close to surface, I guess.
Yeah,
you're hoping to intersect that.
Yeah, we were kind of focusing in on this Maricguna type porphyry model, and basically we grabbed onto that model because of these quartz magnetite mineralized sheeted veins, which are quite typical of these systems. And I think the new discovery of Vendavel by First Quantum up in Celta province is a pretty good example of that. That one actually outcropped on the surface. I think we're looking at something a little deeper, but you've got the sheeted vein zones coming off the top of these systems, and they vector down into what the exploration model here is one of those Maricguna type mineralized cylindrical porphyries at depth, and our MT model is showing that. It's showing it a little bit clearer as we move a little bit further south. But the MT is suggesting that model is valid at the moment.
So, what would a successful hole look like for you at the VN-zone? Would you say? What would the assay look like?
Yeah, I'll tell you, if we can repeat the 5 grams and the 0.22 copper, that would be a major home run, because these systems are typically sub-gram and sub% copper. Now we're getting evidence of higher grade veinlets on the surface. So if we can intersect a significant width of those mineralized sheeted veins, then that's going to be a pretty darn good start. And also getting into stronger alteration as we get into depth. Good strong phyllic alteration that could represent the halo around the porphyry a little bit further down. So there, I think there's actually almost 2 targets here. It's the sheeted vein zone that's closer to the surface, and then the conceptual porphyry target at depth.
And the conceptual porphyry target, I mean, getting into some sort of core of a Maricguna. I mean, if it is a Maricguna, you have a cylinder, right? How is the
generally cylindrical shaped? Yeah.
Yeah, but it can be transformed due to various conditions over time. I think it can be.
It's telescoping and post mineral faulting and late porphyry intrusives coming into it, and there's all kinds of things that can actually happen to these porphyries during their evolution.
And they're usually quite gold strong, 50-50, or sometimes even gold dominant.
Sometimes gold dominant. Yeah, for example, you see in the Caspici, there's a rich gold cap, and then you get down into your gold copper porphyry further down, with a high grade gold cap on some of them. They come in all shapes and sizes. You can look all through the Maricguna district, and there's all kinds of different examples and different grades, different sizes. So,
but do you think, because you would theoretically then have time, if we just map this out, you would have time to do one solid hole at the VN-zone and then do one solid hole at Potro? Could that be one of the strategies?
You could theoretically do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm advancing with the theory that, okay, we're going to test the best one.
Okay.
So thinking of success, we're not going to want to pull off. We're going to do, a couple more. If we're successful on where we start, we want to continue. For example, if we decided to do Potro, and we drilled into that beautiful MT resistivity anomaly, and it turned out to be something completely of non-interest, then that would be as far, you've answered the question, what is that MT anomaly? What is that big resistor? And you've done it with 500 or 600 meters, so you could come back and take another shot at another prospect, and in that case it would be VN-zone, if we chose Potro first, or vice versa.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So on the success, and that will be defined by visuals and also by the XRF gun, you're able to tell if you're going to stay or if you're going to move to the other one. When are you expecting to inform the market as to what target you will start with?
Once we make that decision. So I guess get the geophysics done on Potro, and then we usually do a drill startup press release saying we will be drilling on this target.
And the assay time.
Yeah, ALS in Chile has gotten quicker, but I still think we should be planning for 3 to 4 weeks turnover. So we've been saying, all considering receiving analysis, compilation, interpretation, preparation, we'd probably be looking to put something out to market probably June-ish, early June.
Would you consider, say you drill at Potro first, you get down to 500 meters and bang, you're in mineralization. Are you going to take some photos then and send it out to the market, or will you be quiet about it until you've received the full assays? Who knows?
I have seen, there is companies that put out visual results, and you obviously can't put out BXF results. That's not permitted. I think I'd like to have things well understood and compiled before we cause too much flurry.
I like that. That's what I expected. It's good to know. Okay, so and then I guess just to clarify the parameters of the season, so everyone is informed about that. The season ends, as you say, mid-May to late May, and it starts again in September, or is it a bit earlier than September?
No, it's not. It's generally not earlier. It's generally not earlier because you got your spring runoff, snow in the high altitudes sticks around, usually into October, depending on the year, depending on how much snow we get over winter. So we can be doing activities in September and October, but considering starting up on drilling, I would think it's probably mid-October and forward, if the seasons are as they have been.
And in the interim period, you're not able to do any groundwork on the properties and no work on Rosita or anything like this, target generation work. It's just a hibernation period to interpret and plan for startup again. When are you able to make...
actually a large percentage of the Rosita ground is not high altitude. It's below, a lot of it's below 4,000 meters. So when I showed you on that map, we want to evaluate the properties, and we have to properly geologically evaluate, and that includes stream sediment sampling and prospecting and all those preliminary activities, which could conceivably be carried out over winter in the lower altitudes.
Okay, so that would be the plan then to do that. Had any kind of target generation or licensed project understanding geology work been done by SQM previously, or is it completely fresh?
The property came as a blank piece of paper. They've done no historic work on the property whatsoever, but they've held it for a long time. But they hadn't done any work on it.
And this is we need to go through this, right? So SQM, you describe them as a lithium and battery methods focused entity in Chile. Who are they? Can you explain a bit more who they are, what kind of size they are, what kind of weight and meaning they have? in Chile, and what terms do you have for the earning as well?
Okay. No, Socomich is a private Chilean company. It's a very, very large. It's one of the largest lithium producers in the country. They have made an internal decision to probably option out most of their base metal projects and stick to their lithium and other non-metallics. Lithium is a metallic, but nitrates and whatnot, and actually look towards optioning out most of their copper, silver, gold properties, which they have. They have a lot of property in Chile. Yeah, with the Socomich deal, we have 6 years with $4 million in expenditures and $3 million in payments to acquire 80% interest in the Rosita package. They will retain 20% of the property, and they can, obviously there's clauses that they can reduce down to a royalty. They'll retain a 2% royalty on the property, and the early years are actually reasonably light. Give us time to evaluate and decide which part of the package to maintain, and if there is parts that we don't want to proceed with, we can hand them back, as I mentioned in the first part of the presentation. So it's it's a reasonable deal. It's not there's not intense contractual pressure. We have time to work through things at a reasonable rate.
And I mean, why were you specifically picked? Because I'm positively sure that there must have been some competition here. And what's the relationship that you had previously, and why were you picked specifically? Because you don't have the biggest balance sheet. You might have the brightest people. Who knows? What was the reason?
Okay, this isn't pounding my chest, but Mirasol is a very well respected explorer, and it's very well known in Chile, and it's very well known in Argentina, and obviously, as a public company, it's very well known globally. Socomich liked what we did elsewhere in Chile. We didn't have a relationship prior with them. As the relationship grew, they became very, very, very fond of the people in the company. They thought it was a very honest and straightforward company. And if there was any company out there that would make a discovery, if there was a discovery to be made, they were sure and convinced that it was probably Mirasol. There also another aspect in the Sobek district. It's really important to have good community relations. Mirasol's community relations department excels, and we have been able to develop a relationship with it's called the Polito community in the Vicuña district there, where we're exploring, which is all important, because if we don't have the community with you, there's no moving forward. And a lot of companies have tried and not been successful, and we have been very successful in that aspect. So Socomich could see that Mirasol technically is outstanding. Mirasol, and community relations wise, is outstanding, and they thought we'd be an outstanding partner. I think it's as simple as that.
But you feel like you're able to, I mean, certainly if you drill at Rosita, it's going to be quite adjacent to where you've done more rigorous work, so probably around very close to El Potro, or very close to Sobek Central. The wider property is going to take a longer time to evaluate property, do streams and do all of these things. What's the timeline for you there to understand the property more widely?
Yeah, I think in a couple seasons worth of work.
Yeah. And I guess we should also talk about, I mean, this is highly contingent on what you see from the drill results, but let's say you test El Potro. This is just a scenario. It fails, I guess, where it's not hitting mineralization. Then you go to VN-zone, same story. What would be the next step then? Would you return to, in the next season, would you return to Sobek Central and follow up on the previous drill holes there?
Definitely. And there's lots of other targets out there that we haven't talked about. And there's, several of those do reside in Sobek Central. And as we've discussed previously, there is follow-up work to be done on the 2 previous holes that we drilled last season at Sobek Central. And up in Potro, we're at the moment concentrating on the southeast corner, but there is other areas within the Sobek North block that certainly need follow-up. So, there's still lots to do. And then down the road as well, obviously we have to get down into Sobek South and do the initial evaluation of that block.
I was just about to ask. So when is that scheduled for to do all of the target generation work in Sobek South?
We've got as far as target generation, we've got all our targets already outlined. It's just a matter of getting the crews in and doing the field truthing and evaluation.
Okay, so is it essentially a drill ready then, or is it? Do you have access?
No, not drill ready. The targets are ready to be evaluated by the geological crews on the ground.
Okay, so what's the timeline to have potentially drill ready targets there?
Drill ready targets, if they do exist, we have to get down there, evaluate that block of ground. It sits in a very good neighborhood. There's alteration all around it, and across the border in Argentina, there's a very large systems currently being evaluated by various companies down there that are just adjacent to us to the east. So I'm not sure how much we'll get done this season as far as the ground truthing, but we certainly want to be in there next season between September and the end of the year, see what's there. So if there was something we could move forward quickly as a drill target, the potential to drill it that season would still exist.
We need to talk briefly about your wider portfolio, because you have many big ideas, properties that contains big ideas, right? The reason you can't drill them because you're constrained. The big constraint is capital. Can you highlight and talk briefly about the projects in the portfolio that are of significant scale and potentially be a driving asset for Mirasol in the coming 2 years? It could be your own drilling if you have the capital for it. It could also be a partnership. But could you highlight some of the assets you think can drive?
I think
Sobek, of course.
Yeah, I think the ones that stand out in my mind at the moment as spectacular would be what I'm calling the Altasor district, and that's our Altasor project, and it's just up the road from our Coronation project. And our Coronation project is just across the border from the new discovery by FQM at Vendaval. And in my mind, it's very clear that those 3 projects are extremely similar. Vendaval and Coronation, I think, are part of the same cluster. They just have different nationalities. We're on the Chilean side, right on the border. They're on the Argentine side, right on the border. We have similar outcrops on the ground at Coronation as they have in their drill holes in Vendaval. 30 kilometers to the north along the Argentine border, we have Altasor, which resides on the Chilean side. There's erosional windows that are exposing extremely similar styles of mineralization that we see at Vendaval and Coronation up at the erosional windows at Altasor. What's really interesting here, and actually First Quantum did mention this in their first article about Vendaval, we've talked about these Maricguna-type porphyries in the Maricunga belt. Now we're looking at Vendaval, Coronation, and Altasor, which are 200 kilometers further north than the Maricunga belt, and they have exactly the same style of mineralization. So basically, what these new discoveries have done, and hopefully what will be discovered on our properties, will have moved the Maricunga belt 200 kilometers to the north, which will change the exploration scene dramatically in Chile with that 200-kilometer unexplored gap for Maricunga-type porphyries. So it's very, very exciting.
And if you assign a out of 10 probability that you're able to actually move it forward and start drilling there in the next 2 years, what would you say?
Yeah, I think
Out of
we're Altusor. I think we're at the moment we're moving through the process of the social license there in the communities up at both Altusor and Coronation. That's going well. I think Altusor will come online first. So I think that is a pretty good option there. Apart from Altusor and Coronation, if we move a little bit further back and further down towards the Maricunga belt, we have Atlas and Titan, which are high sulfidation epithermal systems that have viable. Titan is good, a very strong, again, Maricunga type copper gold porphyry target. At Altusor, we do have a mineralized body defined by previous drilling by both Yamana and Newcrest at depth, which still needs a lot of work to define the feeders and define the dimensions of the body. So those two on their own as well are extremely attractive. The portfolio is rich in really prospective projects that, you know, as I say, each and every one of those ones that I showed you on the right side of the slide, you know, are standalones, are rightful standalone flagship property type of projects.
Yes, that is very much true, but kind of the game theory here, if you see success in Sobek, that's going to consume all of your capital because you're going to drill like crazy, right? And it's not cheap to drill. And when you start resource drilling, that's going to consume your capital. If you don't see success in Sobek, you will not be able to source the funds either way to drill these other projects standalone. So in both scenarios, you probably won't be able to advance them yourself. You're probably going to need to partner them. So the most important thing, yes, they are very interesting and great. No one is ascribing value to Mirasol for them being interesting and great in theory. So the likelihood of you actually being able to test them in the next 2 years, that's what I want to know your feeling about. How hard are you pushing to get that done, and likely through a partnership of some kind? Do you feel like you're confident about some of these targets coming online and potentially playing a role in the narrative in the coming 2 years?
Definitely. You know, if the case was that we couldn't, I'll be quite honest, there is a lineup looking to, once we get the social license across the line and the project ready to go, there's a lineup to actually test those projects.
Well, that's a good position to be in.
I would love to do it in-house if we could, but of course that's, you know, it's all dependent on being able to finance everything you want to do. And it's you know, it's easier said than done. Hopefully with, you know, success in Sobek, it maybe give us the option to move out as well, continue with Sobek, and maybe select a couple others to move forward as well.
Yeah,
and as you discussed with Patrick, there is different forms of financing and we have discussed internally project specific financing options. So
yes, yeah, it's going to be interesting, and it's a story of kind of activating the portfolio, and if you can do that in a non-dilution friendly manner, which
exactly.
you're dead set to do, obviously, then yeah, it's a very good story. On a 3-year horizon, what would make you pleased to see Mirasol being? So in 3 years from now, what would be kind of a good outcome for Mirasol, you think?
A good outcome would be discovery on at least 2, maybe 3 of the projects, market cap between 500 million and 1 billion, and a very clear pathway to development. You know, that as I said, I've built 2 mines. We know how to take mines to production. You know, in 3 years' time, after discovery, it'd be nice to see a clear pathway to the development of the first mine.
How much do you think the share count would increase in the meantime?
Yeah, we got 65 million shares out now. It'll probably double. But to have 140 million shares out is nothing.
Okay, Patrick. that's some very great context on the strategic side of things, and thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to following up here in the coming months and years, and following the story closely. Wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and interest.